Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Andrea Lipka. It is a true honor to welcome you to the TESOL-Ukraine Convention 2025. This year's theme, Rising Together, Teaching with Hope and Strength, resonates deeply with the spirit of resilience and unity that defines our TESOL community. As we gather to share research projects, stories, and strategies, we are reminded that education is not only a tool for learning, it is a force for healing, connection, and transformation. In this light, the recent victories for pro-European candidates in Poland and Romania offer us a powerful message that progress, strength, and hope are not only possible, they are within reach when people stand together with purpose and faith. May this convention renew our collective commitment to teaching with courage and compassion. Together we rise. Thank you and welcome.
Вітаю! Greetings to everyone, all participants at TESOL-Ukraine Convention. It is my deep honor to share with you today the story behind Voices of Courage and Vulnerability, Teaching English in a Society at War. My name is Roxana Senishin, and I'm Associate Professor at Pennsylvania State University, Abington College. But I have strong connections to Ukraine. I was born and raised in Ukraine, and I graduated from Lviv National University, English Philology. Therefore, this project for me is both a privilege and responsibility or duty, a way to honor the resilience of Ukrainian educators and those who were teaching for Ukraine from abroad during one of the most challenging times in Ukrainian history. Andrea, could please we move to the next slide? I'll tell a little bit more about the book. This book was born from a need. As the war escalated, English language educators across Ukraine and those teaching for Ukraine, they found themselves in very challenging situations, especially Ukrainian educators, teaching in basements, teaching in shelters, online, and on the move. Their stories of fear, stories of perseverance, stories about creativity, and stories about innovation, as well as hope and thinking about the future, were not being widely documented in TESOL literature, as well as literature, scholarly literature in general. Therefore, Andrea and I, we began collecting narratives to fill this gap. One of those steps was to organize several webinars. Those webinars were organized by TESOL International, specifically intercultural communication intersections that were well attended. That provided for us opportunity and actually strengthened our idea that we have to document these stories. And that's how the idea for the book was confirmed, or to be more specific, was born.
And as we can see, many of the webinar presenters are authors in our book. As we introduce this volume, it is important to highlight the foundational belief that English educators play a vital role in peace building, especially in times of crisis. Drawing on the work of Birch and Oxford et al., we recognize the transformative power of storytelling and personal narratives in fostering resilience, solidarity, and healing. This book fills a critical gap in TESOL literature. As noted by Dr. Larisa Kafecic in the foreword, this work contributes to the field of education in emergencies, a field shaped by decades of displacement, war, and global crisis, yet still evolving in response to 21st century conflicts. We are witnessing how education becomes an anchor amid chaos. The experiences documented here are not only historical testimony, but also a call to action. They invite us to rethink how teachers, and especially English language educators, can act as connectors, leaders, and healers in times of upheaval. Ultimately, this book serves as both documentation and inspiration, a record of the courage shown by Ukrainian educators, and a reminder of the pivotal role of teachers in rebuilding and sustaining communities through education. And there are 6 major parts of the book which serve as both the structural and thematic foundation. Part 1 sets the historical and cultural context of Ukraine and examines how education has been affected by Russian aggression. It also speaks to the resilience of Ukrainian identity. Part 2 captures how teachers and students found a way to adapt and make meaning in teaching and learning despite extraordinary disruptions. Part 3 centers on pedagogical resilience and collaboration, highlighting how educators manage to provide quality education in the most adverse circumstances. Part 4 addresses trauma-informed teaching and learning. These chapters are particularly moving as they show how educators supported students coping with trauma while navigating their own emotional challenges. Part 5 introduces the contributions of virtual educators from abroad, many of whom joined Ukrainian classrooms remotely. Their stories illustrate the power of global solidarity. Finally, Part 6 includes an afterword from TESOL Ukraine leadership, a heartfelt message to the readers affirming the importance of unity and vision for the future. Each section reveals not just the content, but courage, creativity, and compassion that educators brought into their work.
We are proud that this project brought together 27 Ukrainian educators from across 7 regions, many of whom were displaced from their institutions. Regions that are represented by contributing authors from Ukraine are Dnipropetrovska Oblast, Ivano-Frankivska, Kyievska, Kharkivska, Sumska, Zaporizhska, and Zakarpatska. In addition to Ukrainian authors, as it was mentioned earlier, there were those who were collaborating virtually and in solidarity with Ukrainian educators. There are 10 US-based educators who contributed to this volume. What we will be sharing next are just a few insights from chapters, because that would take a long time to share many powerful stories. Andrea will speak about the first one.
The insights in this book are personal, poignant, and incredibly powerful. In chapter 1, Vysotska writes a line that truly captures the spirit of this book. We understand our mission, and we never forget that the future of the country depends on us, on our work. This quote echoes a deep truth. Education didn't pause because of war. Instead, it persisted as an act of resistance, purpose, and connection. Teachers and students saw themselves as bridges between cultures and active participants in Ukraine's democratic future. This early chapter sets the tone for the rest of the book, an affirmation that teaching during crisis is not only possible, but profoundly meaningful. In the next slide, I wanted to share a quote by Bradford. In chapter 18, Bradford shared findings from a survey of Ukrainian students. While many students expressed how war disrupted their learning and lives, others described studying as a source of comfort, escape, and responsibility. Some even felt that continuing their education was a way to honor those defending their homes and to prepare for rebuilding Ukraine in the future. Roxana will share the last quote, which is a wonderful Ukrainian poem.
Yeah, and I would like to add what Andrea has shared earlier, that we can see in those selected quotes how authors reflect on this deep emotional labor of teaching under fire and the surprising ways in which education becomes a source of strength. Here, if in this insight, that's to highlight again the power of poetry in creativity to process trauma. As Andrea talked about parts or sections in the book, one of the sections focuses on trauma-informed teaching and learning. That section has the largest number of chapters. This is an opportunity for us to share just a small insight about Kovalenko's work with students and focus on using poetry translation as a meaningful, expressive outlet that fostered engagement, reflection, and connection. Students in her class worked on translating many poems. One of the poems that we have example here is «Живи Україно» by Людмила Яцура. I'll read it in both English and Ukrainian. Хай зійде сонце вранішньо і мирно, ти волелюбна, ти моя сім'я. Живи в країно, ти живи в країно, хай буде доля, як ясна зоря. The sun may rise, in peace of morning may it reign. My freedom-loving home, my family you are. Long live Ukraine, please live Ukraine. Let fate your shine like a brightening star. This wonderful translation was done by Christina Ponomarenko, a student from Odessa, in Kovalenko's class. Next, Andrea will talk about how the book can be used.
Thank you, Roxana. So the book is not only a collection of stories, it is also a practical tool for educators, trainers, researchers, and policymakers. For educator, the volume offers professional development on trauma-informed and emergency pedagogy, reflective tools for adapting strategies, training material on teaching in conflict zones. For TESOL researchers and policymakers, the book provides grounded insight into frontline teacher experiences, data and testimony that can inform policy around teacher well-being and education in emergencies. And for global educator communities, it is an invitation to learn from Ukraine's story, build international partnerships, and promote solidarity through education. Ultimately, the book reminds us that in every crisis, there is room for courage, growth, and shared learning.
And of course, it's important to acknowledge these powerful contributions by all the authors who contributed to the book, 27 Ukrainian educators and 10 US-based educators. Their stories are powerful voices, and we are so happy that they dedicated their time and work with us to bring this to publication. And it is very important also to acknowledge Dr. Tony Erben, who is professor of education at the University of Tampa in Florida, who's the managing editor of the process, was the managing editor of the process, and supported us throughout also publishing process. And I would say the highlight or very important part of motivation for me personally, I'm sure for Andrea too, was when we found out that one of the students, who is a student at my university, agreed to contribute in a meaningful, also unique, creative way, contribute art piece. The cover that we have on the design, the art piece that is on the cover book cover, was created by Oris Luzhetsky, who is a student, but also he has Ukrainian heritage, and it was a meaningful way for him to contribute to this project. And finally, we'd like to acknowledge the endorsement of the book and opportunity that she provided for us to write the foreword was also powerful. And in closing, I would like to say that Voices of Courage and Vulnerability is more than a book. It is collective testimony. It is a reminder of the human spirit that persists through war, displacement, fear. For me, it is also deeply personal as a mother, a language educator, and a Ukrainian. Thank you so much for listening and for your commitment to keeping voices like these alive in our field.
Thank you for joining us today and for your interest in our presentation. This project, as Roxana mentioned, is not just a publication. It is a collective testimony to the power of language educators to inspire, connect, and uplift, even in the darkest of times. We are incredibly grateful to TESOL Ukraine for the opportunity to present our work, and to all of you educators, researchers, and advocates who continue to teach with courage, compassion, and resilience. Together we rise. Together we teach with hope and strength. Thank you.
Thank you.